My parents refused to attend my wedding because I wouldn't pay for my entitled sister's luxurious European honeymoon and went no contact. Now 3 months later, they're begging to reconcile. I'm 30 male, living in a mid-sized American suburb with my wife. My parents and younger sister also live nearby, or at least they did until everything went haywire around my wedding a few months ago. Back when my wife and I first announced our engagement, my father and mother seemed supportive. My sister, on the other hand, was more interested in what fun she could squeeze out of the situation. She'd been pestering our parents for a lavish vacation for ages, but it came to a head when she decided that her honeymoon, scheduled a month after my wedding, needed to be an extravagant 2-week tour across Europe. At first, I didn't think much of her plans. She'd been engaged to her longtime boyfriend, and they were always talking about big, showy vacations. However, one afternoon, my mother called me. She said, "Your sister wants help funding her honeymoon. Since you're the older brother, maybe you can chip in." I was confused. Was it just help, or did they expect me to cover the entire bill? Then my father joined the conversation, clarifying that they decided I should pay for the whole thing. Their reasoning: "You have a decent job, and we've already funded your wedding. Time to pay it forward." I nearly dropped the phone. Sure, they helped a bit with my wedding costs, but nowhere near the tens of thousands a European honeymoon could run. Especially the one my sister had in mind, flying first class, hopping between 5-star hotels, guided tours in multiple countries. I asked, why can't she and her fiancé handle their own honeymoon expenses? My mother's tone sharpened. "You're the stable one with savings. We're too old to keep paying for everything. Be a good brother." I felt a flicker of anger. My sister had never really learned the value of money. She always mooched off our parents. Now they were trying to shift that burden onto me. I tried to stay calm, reminding them that my wife and I had our own future goals. We wanted to buy a house, possibly start a family. Draining my funds for my sister's dream honeymoon made 0 sense. My father sighed, insisting I should keep peace in the family. I refused. "I can't do it," I said firmly. That single refusal snowballed into chaos. My mother called me selfish, implying I was neglecting family responsibilities. My father warned that if I didn't help my sister, they'd boycott my wedding. I was floored. The wedding I'd spent months planning, the one I'd invited them to with love and expectation. All because I wouldn't bankroll my sister's luxurious trip. I thought it was an empty threat, but soon I realized they were dead serious. My sister, meanwhile, kept texting me pictures of resorts, European travel packages, even private yacht tours. She'd attach notes like, "This one looks perfect, only $5,000 a night," or "Add this to the itinerary." It was so audacious. I told her point blank, "I'm not paying for your honeymoon." She didn't miss a beat, calling me stingy, whining that everyone else in her social circle had fairy tale honeymoons. She argued she deserved the same. I wondered if she'd lost her mind. The tension exploded a week before my wedding. My father informed me that he and my mother wouldn't attend unless I changed my mind. They actually put it in writing, an email that read like a ransom note: "Fulfill your obligations or we're not coming." Furious, I told them if that was their final stance, they were welcome to stay home. And so they did. On my wedding day, neither my father nor mother showed up. My sister had also decided she was too upset to attend. The heartbreak was immense, but my wife and I tried to focus on celebrating with the guests who supported us. We left for our own short honeymoon, brimming with mixed emotions: joy at our marriage, anger at the family drama. After returning, I felt a hollow ache whenever I thought about my parents' absence on my wedding day. It was an undeniable betrayal, all because they sided with my sister's outlandish demand. My sister's wedding came a month later, and I didn't attend. Neither did my wife. There was no official feud declaration, just a mutual understanding that lines had been crossed. I heard from acquaintances that my father and mother funded my sister's entire European trip themselves, presumably to maintain peace on her end. They even took out a small loan to cover the sky-high costs. Having never traveled to Europe, they naively assumed prices would match what they remembered from their youth or from budget-friendly deals. Instead, they got slapped with monstrous bills for first-class flights, gourmet dining, and luxury hotels across multiple countries. My mother told a relative that she nearly fainted when the final totals came in. She'd underestimated the cost by thousands. Not to mention currency exchange rates, and hidden tourist fees. My father was livid. He believed the honeymoon might run a few grand, not tens of thousands. But it was too late. My sister had already locked in bookings, refusing to compromise. She and her new husband gleefully snapped social media photos of each lavish stop, apparently unbothered by the financial strain on our parents. Meanwhile, I watched from a distance, a swirl of anger and vindication in my gut. I recognized the seeds of entitlement my parents had sown in my sister's upbringing, and now they were reaping the bitter harvest. 3 months passed. My wife and I settled into newlywed life. We rarely mentioned my family, preferring to avoid the sting of it all. Then one evening, my phone rang, a number I recognized as my mother's but had ignored for months. I was prepared to let it go to voicemail, but my wife gently said, "Maybe you should see what they want. Could be important." So I answered. My mother's voice quivered as she spoke. "We made a huge mistake. Please, can we talk?" She explained that after paying for my sister's honeymoon, they realized how unfair and expensive it was. They'd gone into unexpected debt, forcing them to cut corners in their own budget. My father and mother finally understood how insane it was to expect me to finance that lavish trip. They regretted not coming to my wedding, claiming they acted out of emotion and misguided loyalty to my sister. I listened, letting her speak without interruption. When she finished, I asked simply, "What about my sister? Does she feel the same?" A pause, then my mother sighed. "She still thinks it was your duty to pay. She's upset we even apologized." That figured. My sister had grown used to being indulged. They wanted to meet in person, to apologize face to face. My father also got on the line, uncharacteristically subdued. He admitted he'd acted irrationally, letting pride and anger overshadow the importance of attending my wedding. I felt conflicting emotions, anger, relief, a faint glimmer of hope. I missed having parents who supported me. But could I trust them not to revert to old ways? I agreed to a meetup. My wife was cautious but supportive. She reminded me to keep boundaries. That weekend, we met at a quiet cafe. My mother's eyes were red from crying. My father's shoulders slumped in shame. After some awkward small talk, they tearfully apologized. "We betrayed your trust," my father said, voice trembling. My mother clasped my hand. "We let your sister's entitlement blind us." It was all so stupid. Hearing them own up to everything was surreal. They acknowledged how petty and misguided it was to boycott my wedding. They also lamented the financial hit they took covering my sister's extravaganza, wishing they'd seen the red flags sooner. Part of me felt gratification, but also sadness that it took personal loss for them to realize their error. Yet, seeing their vulnerability, I sensed genuine remorse. The next challenge was deciding how to move forward. My parents asked for a fresh start, hoping to rebuild our relationship. They even offered to host a belated family gathering to honor my marriage, a smaller, private celebration so they could rectify not being there. Initially, I balked, not wanting another fiasco. But my father insisted, "We want to show we respect you and your wife's union, even if it's delayed." My wife and I discussed it at length. Ultimately, we decided to give them a chance, on the condition that my sister's involvement would be minimal or non-existent if she still harbored resentment. We didn't want more drama. My parents agreed, somewhat reluctantly, to keep the event small and discreet. Meanwhile, my sister caught wind of this reconciliation. She bombarded me with calls, demanding to know why I was excluding her. She ridiculed my parents for apologizing, claiming they were betraying her now. She spat venom about how I was two-faced for guilting them into paying a fortune for honeymoon. The irony was staggering. She still believed it should have been my bill. She ended one call with, "You'll regret turning them against me." The entitlement in her voice was unhinged. That's when I realized she probably hadn't learned a thing from her honeymoon fiasco. She expected everyone to bend to her demands. I told my mother about my sister's messages, and she sighed. "She's been acting out. She's furious that we're acknowledging your feelings, not just hers." My mother explained that after returning from Europe, my sister started pressing them for more money, complaining about wanting a bigger apartment or another trip. That's when my parents reached their limit. She was an adult, married, and still whining for handouts. My father confided that my sister's attitude caused a rift in their house. Tired of her tantrums, they threatened to cut her off financially if she didn't tone down her demands. She responded by hurling accusations, claiming they cared more about me now than her. My father realized just how deep her entitlement ran. So in a dramatic turn, he and my mother told my sister they were done enabling her. She'd have to stand on her own. My sister stormed out, calling them ungrateful parents. Finally, the day of the small family gathering arrived. My wife and I were cautious but hopeful. My mother prepared a simple lunch. My father offered a heartfelt toast acknowledging they'd made a horrible mistake. We exchanged hugs, tears were shed, but it felt authentic. The tension in my chest eased as I saw them truly trying to make amends. We spent the afternoon catching up. They apologized again for missing my wedding, and I assured them I appreciated their willingness to admit fault. By evening, they mentioned that they had effectively gone no contact with my sister for a while, at least until she adjusted her attitude. She'd send them vile messages, accusing them of siding with me. They realized how she manipulated them in the past. She needs a wake-up call, my father said sadly. Over the following weeks, we slowly repaired the bond. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes I'd recall how they'd chosen my sister's honeymoon demands over my wedding. But they showed consistent effort, calling regularly to see how my wife and I were doing, even surprising us with a belated wedding gift. The tension that once weighed heavily started to lift. My sister, meanwhile, continued her meltdown. Rumor had it she tried to rally other relatives against me and our parents, spinning tales of how she was betrayed by her own family. But no one really bought it. People could see through her entitlement. She eventually burned bridges with her new husband's family too, demanding more money from them. I heard that she ended up isolated, except for a few friends who probably had no idea of her real behavior. A final showdown occurred when my sister turned up unannounced at my parents' doorstep. She was in a rage, accusing them of making her life miserable by cutting her off financially. She wanted them to pay her credit card bills from the honeymoon, charges beyond what they'd already covered. My mother refused, calmly pointing out that she had her chance, she blew it, and their enabling days were over. My father backed her up, telling my sister to leave and not come back until she could apologize properly. She cursed them both, threatened legal action which had no basis. Then she turned on me, spewing nonsense about how this all started because I wouldn't pay for her honeymoon. That's when my father lost his temper and told her, "You can't blame him or us for your reckless choices. Grow up." Furious, she stormed out, and that was the last straw. My parents told me they'd disown her, at least temporarily, until she recognized she needed to change. I can't say I was thrilled to see it come to that, but I understood. My sister's sense of entitlement had hit a point of no return. She manipulated everyone, showing no remorse for her destructive behavior. Meanwhile, I felt a weight lift. My parents had truly flipped their stance, no longer coddling her. They recognized that love sometimes means refusing to feed someone's toxic patterns. The following month, my wife and I hosted a small barbecue. My father and mother came, beaming with relief at rebuilding our relationship. We laughed over silly memories, planned future get-togethers. The ghost of the wedding fiasco still lingered, but it no longer strangled us. I could see they'd learn a hard lesson about letting my sister's entitlement override common sense, and about what happens when you let petty demands overshadow a child's most important day. Now, 3 months after that initial rift, life feels more stable. My parents remain firm on their stance with my sister. She, from what I hear, is drifting, refusing to see how her own actions isolated her. Perhaps someday she'll realize the folly of her ways, but until then, my father and mother won't budge. And neither will I.